In a recent video, we took a look at some of the early blooming trees and shrubs, but for today's video, we're going to take a look at some of the herbaceous perennials that bloom early in the spring. And coming around the corner here, you can see that yellow flowering lemon queen globe flower. Hey everybody, I'm Kevin, coming to you from Zone 4 of the Northern Great Plains, and let's get right to it, talking about this first perennial, this lemon queen globe flower. And this blooms early for me. And that's something to keep in mind as we look at the different varieties today, depending on where you have your perennials planted and what region you live in. Flowering time can vary, mostly depending on how quickly that area warms up in the spring after winter. And if you've noticed these spent flower heads or seed heads right behind us, this is a Pasque flower. We're going to look at that one in just a little bit. And then one of my recent favorite perennials that we planted called Prairie Smoke. This little perennial right in front of us right here. But what about that Pasque flower with those showy plume-like seed heads? I think I find this stage of the flower as interesting as when they are in full color. This bed here that we're coming up on started out as just one plant, but it's obviously self-seeding and spreading now, and I'm happy to let it do so. Now this is a great perennial for those early flowers, but they can actually keep flowering for a couple of months, with dozens of flowers on the same plant with those different shades of blues, purples, and even white, contrasting beautifully with those bright yellow stamens in the center. Wow, yeah, this is a fantastic perennial. As long as we're right here, let's take a quick look at another globe flower. This is Golden Queen globe flower, also called Chinese globe flower. Just like the lemon queen, it's in the Trollius genus, but it blooms much later for me, well over a month apart. But isn't that a nice golden orange color? Let's take a look at that Prairie Smoke I mentioned, another great perennial with really interesting pink feathery seed heads. Each flower stem has 3 of these pink nodding bell-shaped flowers, but the real show begins as they transition into these wispy blooms. Prairie Smoke's a great perennial if you want something to stay quite short, less than a foot, and it's going to spread slowly by a rhizome, but what a great perennial for the hot, dry areas in your gardens. I love this perennial. This has been really fun to watch through the spring. And if you like blue flowers, Lungwort is a great one for shade gardens. I planted this last fall not realizing it was going to be such an early bloomer, so I was pleasantly surprised and happy with how it's doing in this location under our Canada Red chokecherry. There are other Lungwort varieties available with variegated foliage, which add even more interest to your shaded areas. Okay, let's cut through this garden, take a look at a nice white blooming perennial tucked away behind this Taunton yew under our flame and your maple hedge. The anemone, also called windflower. Depending on the variety, the anemones will either bloom in the early spring or sometimes very late in the season into fall. This has been coming back in this location reliably now for over 10 years, and it's mostly a shaded area, which also happens to be a really dry location. And it's hard to miss this next one, ay caramba. This is one of the creeping phlox varieties with a pink flower and that red eye. The creeping phlox are a great carpet type perennial, staying below 6 inches. I've got mine growing in this mulch bed, but boy, they'll do great in rock beds and on slopes. Let's shift gears and talk about some bulbs. The crocus, probably the earliest of bloomers with that dark purple. Sometimes it's even peeking out of the ground when the snow is still around. And for the first time in a long time, I added a couple of daffodils to the garden last fall, giving us some early yellow blooms. But my favorite bulb is the tulip. What spring without tulips? And there are so many different flower types and sizes available now. If you haven't done so in a while, do a web search on tulips and you'll be amazed at the selection. I'm not going to talk about the different varieties in this video, but wow, so many different color choices. You have to plan ahead though if you want to have tulip flowers in the spring. Tulips need to be planted in the fall as they need a cold period to initiate flowering the next season. It's actually a pretty simple process when planting, especially when you're using a small auger like you see here, or even a simple hand tool. This one you just press in and it takes out a plug of soil. Unfortunately, the rabbits, they like to nibble on the tulip leaves, but they were kind enough to leave us at least one flower on this little group. I don't think tulips are quite as common as they used to be in gardens, but I've decided I'm going to keep adding more and more each fall from now on. I just love having that early spring color. So make sure you plan ahead, mark it down on the calendar if you want to get some of those early blooming tulips. You got to get at it in the fall. That's all I've got for now. Thanks for stopping by Garden Hike. We'll see you again next video.